Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.
Heart Sutra. Heart Sutra, I think in Vietnamese or some language. I have an announcement for Miss Maria from Sweden. Maria of Sweden. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, today, of course, the remaining few shlokas of the Panchaparamita Sutra, Heart Sutra, then the another text wrote by one great Tibetan master, who at that time well known as Bodhisattva. So his text, of course, he also very great scholar. I read
some of his writing, some commentary, some important Indian masters sort of text. Wonderful, very good. Then this short sort of text he wrote specially for practitioner about Bodhicitta, altruism. So I received teaching with oral transmission and also explanation from late Kunala Rinpoche. And Kunala Rinpoche, again, I think quite well known as a living Bodhisattva. His main practice is the Shantadeva's book. So he also is teaching Shantadeva's book several times. And I also received teaching of Shantadeva's book from him. So since then, my practice of altruism is immense sort of help like that. So I often telling people, those people who really have the interest about practice of altruism, then that book must read. And then also the Nagarjuna's book on short commentary about one verses of Guhi Samanza Tantra. Chanchu Semde Kanisuri, Chanchu Semde.
Commentary of Awakened Mind. Commentary on Bodhicitta.
Commentary of Bodhicitta. That Bodhicitta, of course, mainly according to Guhi Samanza, but then also include the altruism, also include like that. So, now read the Heart Sutra.
Okay, now the text. So yesterday, His Holiness says that with regard to the text, with reference to the 5 parts, His Holiness was a little bit confused yesterday. So, where the text says, Shariputra, any noble son or noble daughter who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should clearly see this way. So that refers to the practice or cultivation of the path to accumulation. So the path of accumulation is that you need to accumulate so much great positive energy that helps you to advance on the higher paths. And then after that, you reach the path of preparation, or so having accumulated a lot of merits that helps you to realize emptiness rather more deeply, then during the path of accumulation, then you reach the path of preparation. And at the part of preparation, what you attain is that path, the realization or insight into emptiness through meditation, and experiential experience of emptiness through meditation. And perhaps there may be also some difference according to the philosophical traditions. And then from the text, from this part where even the 5 aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence, down to even no attainment, that refers to the path of seeing. So all the appearances of the conventionality of things and duality will disappear, and you are, when you reach the path of seeing, you get absorbed, totally absorbed in the emptiness, and that is when you see the truth of the truth or the ultimate truth directly for the first time, and that is called the path of seeing. And when you reach the path of seeing of the Mahayana, you also attain the first Bodhisattva ground. With regard to the 10 grounds of the Bodhisattvas, this is mentioned. They are mentioned in many different texts, such as the Introduction to a Middle Way by Master Chandrakirti. And so the Bodhisattvas advance through the path of the first ground through to the 10th ground. And when they reach the path of seeing for the first time, they attain the path which acts as an antidote to certain destructive emotions which are to be overcome by the path of seeing itself. And then once these destructive emotions are overcome, they attain the cessation, the first time, for the true cessation within themselves, and that stage is called the thoroughly liberated path of seeing. And then from the next passage, therefore, Shariputra, since they have no attainment, the law and wisdom, to the end of this passage refers to the path of meditation. So the path of meditation comprises of the second Bodhisattva ground through to the 10th Bodhisattva ground, and during the first 7 grounds, including the path of seeing, the Bodhisattvas, Arya Bodhisattvas, attain the paths which serve as an antidote to that of the destructive emotions, what are known as kleshas, or afflictive thoughts and emotions. And after having overcome these destructive emotions during the first 7 stages, then from the 8th ground onwards, the Bodhisattvas attain the path to overcome those of the engage in the path or practice of overcoming even the imprints or the latent potencies left by these afflictive thoughts and emotions. And then all the Buddhas who abide in the 3 times so here this refers to the 10th Bodhisattva ground, the Bodhisattva on the 10th ground. who has reached or attained qualities which are very resemblance of those of the qualities of the Buddha, and they have reached the highest Bodhisattva level, highest level within the Bodhisattva path, Bodhisattva amongst the Bodhisattvas. So in Tantra, there is the term Buddha is sometimes applied or refers to the 10th ground Bodhisattvas, and then after that, once someone becomes a Buddha, that stage is referred to as Vajradhara state. And so when you are at the on the 10th ground of Bodhisattvas, then you attain a path which serves as antidote to the subtlest the cognitive obscuration. And then with the help of this path, you attain the ultimate or the final cessation, the true cessation, which is at the level of the Buddha. So that cessation is also has the dual attribute of purity of the two, purity or purification of the two obscurations or two defilements. And that is also when you reach that of the Dharmakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya of Bodhisattva, Buddha. So this Dharmakaya is the Buddha body which the Bodhisattvas attain when they become a Buddha, which is for their own interest. And now in order to reach that Dharmakaya, the Bodhisattvas have dedicated themselves for the benefit of all sentient beings, and therefore the way they, just as they have dedicated and determined to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, the best way they can benefit others is not through by showing miracles and things like that, but by giving teachings. And therefore, the Buddhas, having gone through the Bodhisattva paths and having become the Buddhas, what they need to do is, after having become a Buddha, they need to teach their disciples, their followers. And so for the practitioners, what we need to do is we need to first listen to the teaching or study it, and then reflect on the teaching, and then finally meditate on it. And through that, you have to proceed on the path. So, to give an analogy here, when we look at when you look at the aeroplanes and especially go into the cockpit, you can see so many different electrical switches that are there. And if I were to be a pilot of one aeroplane, I wouldn't be able to manage it. And so you have to be really adept at which switch to use and what you are doing in operating your aeroplane. And then after having gone through some training of training to become a pilot, and having really become very well acquainted with all the machines, then when you become a pilot, actually a pilot, then you can actually use the different machines, switches and so on properly, and fly the aeroplane without problem. And so by showing the path to the disciples who who would proceed on the path to Buddhahood. And therefore, in order to teach the disciples, the Buddhas have to be accessible to their disciples, to the ones they are going to give teachings. And therefore, they appear in the form, the physical dimension, called the form body of Buddha. And within the form body itself, there is a form body which is accessible only to the Arya Bodhisattvas. And this is called the Sambhogakaya, or complete resourceful body, Buddha body. And because this is not accessible to ordinary sentient beings, then the Buddhas appear in a certain form which is accessible to the ordinary beings, and this is called Nirmanakaya. And therefore, Buddha Shakyamuni himself appeared in this form of the Buddha, the Nirmanakaya form of Buddha, and gave teachings, appeared in India and gave teaching. So we have these four bodies, Buddha bodies, the Svabhavakaya, the Dharmakaya, and then the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. So the final stage of the path of meditation of a bodhisattva on the 10th ground, serving as the antidote to the last remnants of the defilements. Then having by overcoming this, the final remnant of the defilement, then the Bodhisattva finally becomes a Buddha and attains these four bodies. So all the sutras of perfection of wisdom, whatever version they are in, they talk about emptiness, using objects such as form and sound and so forth as the basis of establishment for the demonstration or establishment of it. And then they also show the four parts of a trainee and how to proceed on or train themselves on the path. And then also it shows the resultant stage of Buddhahood, and also using that also as the basis for establishing emptiness. It teaches emptiness. And then there are within emptiness, teaching on emptiness, there are division of emptiness into 16. So Master Nagarjuna says that if there's something which is not empty, which means that if there was something which is not empty of inherent existence, and then there could be some things which could also be empty of inherent And therefore, since there is nothing which is not empty of the lack of the empty of inherent existence, therefore everything is empty. So after having learned that emptiness is, the meaning of emptiness is that nothing is inherently existent, once you might get the idea that the emptiness, what about emptiness itself? Perhaps it could be independently existing phenomena. Then the answer to that is that emptiness itself is empty of inherent existence. So of course emptiness exists because it is found by the intellectual understanding, which relies on like the wisdom arising through hearing, reflection and meditation. But then that doesn't mean that if you hold emptiness to have some independent existence, absolute existence, then that would be a view which is unredeemable. And then with regard to teaching of emptiness, there is 16 emptiness, and which is further categorized into 4 and 2 emptinesses. So you have to understand that emptiness itself is empty of inherent existence. With regard to emptiness, understanding or realization of emptiness, if you ask, in order to become, does somebody necessarily need to realize emptiness in order to reach the path of accumulation of a bodhisattva? Path of accumulation. Of course, with regards to those disciples who are said to be of sharp faculty, for them it is necessary to realize emptiness before entering the path of accumulation. Whereas others, the disciples who are of more duller faculty, then for them it's not necessary to realize emptiness before entering the path of accumulation. In Master Shanta Rakshita's text, called The Ornament of Middle Way, and also Master Nagarjuna says that first goes through in relation to the 2 types of trainees, of those of sharp faculty and those of dull faculty. They say that for the sharp faculties, they must first realize emptiness, and then with the help of that realization, they should cultivate the bodhicitta, the compassion. And compassion So in order to have compassion, they should feel the concern for the suffering of others. And because of that, of wishing to liberate others from samsara, this compassion is also called the wish to save others or protect others. Compassion, wishing to protect others. So you have to be able to see the possibility of being able to, possibility of going out of this suffering. And it's like if you see someone being carried away by a strong current of a river, and you see that possibility of taking that person out of the river, seeing that there is some corner in the banks of the river where you can go and try to save that person from out of that water. Whereas if there is no possibility for saving that person, you will feel just sorry for the person. And so just as you are able to see that there's possibility of going out of suffering, this comes from the understanding of emptiness, because once you realize that things are empty, you realize that this ignorance about the true nature of things is something that you can actually overcome, and therefore you see the possibility of going out of suffering, because you can see the possibility of overcoming the root or cause of suffering. And otherwise, if you don't see that, then there's no way you can see the possibility of liberation from samsara. So ignorance is a distorted view of the true nature of things, and because of that, the understanding or the wisdom realizing emptiness can serve as antidote to it, and which overcomes it. And then the nature of mind is such that once you familiarize it, it is a very stable basis for cultivation of the path and all that. And then the very nature of the mind is that it is clear and aware. And because of this, you can see that the defilements that are on our mind stream are something which are not in the nature of the mind, in the intrinsic nature of the mind itself, and therefore we can separate the mind from these. And therefore you can see that once you arise and understand emptiness, you can see that this can help to cultivate that of compassion. So, because of that, what Master Chandrakirti has said is, of course, true, that he says that the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha are the refuges for those aspiring to liberation. So, of course, people will have single-pointed faith in the different gods and deities that they believe in. But when it comes to Buddhism, how you look at the refuges, the objects of refuge, or the three jewels, is such that you look at them as protector for yourself from the ones who save you from the samsara and lead you to that of liberation. So in Buddhism, this liberation or nirvana is a quality of the mind that you attain, the freedom from the causes of suffering. And therefore, the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, the Buddha being the teacher, the Dharma being the actual refuge, and then the Sangha being the existence on the path. These are the three refuges for a Buddhist. So whether the Buddha and Dharma or Buddha and Sangha become the objects of refuge or not is differentiated on the basis of their realization of selflessness. Therefore, the fundamental to Buddhism is that of understanding of emptiness. So, interdependence and emptiness are complementary. So from the point of view of emptiness, on the basis of emptiness, understanding of emptiness, you can talk about liberation, that there is possibility to be free from the causes of suffering. And then dependent origination shows that the causality, dependence in terms of causality and dependence in terms of designation. And then there's also the division of the emptiness of appearance and emptiness, the dependent origination in terms of appearance and dependent origination in terms of emptiness. And so this is what the Buddhism teaches. So therefore, the realization of emptiness, the wisdom of emptiness is the path which leads one to the other shore of the ocean, which is that of the liberation, the perfection of wisdom. And this is called, why it's called that, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. And then the mantra of great liberation, great knowledge. So because of our ignorance, for example, the ignorance of the alphabet, within which we can have a mere ignorance of ignorance, whereas there's another type of ignorance which is to mistake another letter of the alphabet for A, the letter A, and this is the misconception. So and this is the second type of ignorance, a misconception. So which sees the opposite of what the truth is. So within this distorted view or ignorance, there is the ignorance about the causality, law of causality, saying that it's not true to say that if you do such and such action or engage in such and such action, there will be such and such effect, and therefore ignore or disregard such teachings. This is the distorted view regarding the law of causality. Of course, we can also have ignorance, which is a mere ignorance about lack of knowledge about the law of causality as well. And then there is the ignorance about the true nature of things. And therefore, the wisdom of reality, the wisdom realizing the reality as it is serves as the antidote to that of the all kinds of ignorance. So therefore, this shows this is referred to by the mantra of the great knowledge, and because this knowledge of emptiness makes you unexalt, it's just the unexalt mantra. And then the next one, the mantra equal to the unequaled, equal to the unequaled. Unequaled here refers to the Buddha, and because sentient beings are not equal to the Buddhas, and through this perfection of wisdom, you are led to that state. It is called the mantra equal to the unequaled. So we see the multiplicity of things around us. Although there is samsara, nirvana, and so forth, but when you check into the final reality of them, the multiplicity of things are equal in or in the same taste in one taste in that of the wisdom realizing emptiness, the perfection of wisdom. And so that also is referred by the mantra equal to the unequaled. So the mantra that quells the suffering is true because it is not deceptive. So the multiplicity of things that appears is also termed as deceptive. But that doesn't mean that the Buddha said that things do not have any inherently true existence. But that doesn't mean that there is nothing at all, but things arise in dependence on other factors, and therefore they exist by dependence on others. And therefore things do not exist in the ultimate sense, but in the conventional terms, there is a person, a human being is there in conventional terms. A human being is actually there in convention. But a dream human person is not a human person, but a human being is a human being. But both are equal in the sense of not having any inherent existence. Although they both are empty of inherent existence, but the human beings do exist, whereas the dream human being is not a human being. So how do you make the difference? Is they have to be a human being exists by convention, is renowned in convention, and it is not undermined by another valid cognition. Although you may think that this person is conventionally existent and renowned in convention, or and that the person is not undermined, that conventionality is not undermined by another conventional cognition. You can confirm whether that person exists or not conventionally by checking with other people's perceptions. And what you have seen, if the other people also confirm, then you may take that person to be validly existent. Whereas the third criteria here for the conventionality of the person is that if you check into the final reality of the person, of course you cannot find the person, but that doesn't mean that this analysis into the final existence or final nature of the person, this perception doesn't undermine the conventional nature of the person at all. Whereas the Chittamatrian philosophical thought assert that there is a person within the individual, which the final the identity is that of the alaya consciousness, but even that alaya consciousness cannot be existent if you check into its final reality, and this is undermined by the conventional perception. And another analogy here could be a snake and a mottled rope, coiled mottled rope. And of course, when you see a snake, you can say there is a snake there. But when you see a mottled coiled rope and think that there is a snake, but at a closer look, you don't. You find that there is no snake. So that there is a big difference between the two. Although you had this, you have the perception of snake on both, but one is correct and the other is incorrect. Changyur Rabedoji says that when you look into the final nature of things, it's not so much about looking outwardly whether things exist in this way or that way externally, but you have to find it, check it within yourself. Because things do appear as if they have some inherent existence, independent existence, but they don't exist that way. So things that exist nominally and function, and they affect us positively or negatively. And so things could be, we can assert that things do exist because they have effect on us. And therefore, whether the criteria or the characteristic feature of something being existent is that they are observed by or established by a valid cognition. So whether something is established by a valid cognition or not, you have to understand that to be existent or not, on the basis of whether it is cognized by a valid cognition or not. So if something doesn't exist, even if it is seen or it does appear to your perception, but if it doesn't exist on the by way of the valid cognition, then it's not an existent. And so Changyur Rabedoji goes on to say that because of this understanding of how things really exist in the conventional and ultimate manners, one is not, one doesn't fall into the two extremes. Therefore, the mantra of the perfect wisdom is proclaimed tathayatha gate gate paragat parasam gate bodhi soha. Of course, we all recite this mantra. We have to ask whether we pronounce this mantra correctly or not to someone who knows the Sanskrit better, whether the Tibetans pronounce it better or more correctly, or the Chinese pronounce it more correctly. We have to ask some Sanskrit scholar. So of course Tibetans are not able to recite it exactly like the Sanskrit scholars. So when some Sanskrit scholars recite certain passages in Sanskrit, it's completely different. Amazing. So tathayatha means it is like this. Gate gate means go go. Gata means to go. So gate gate means go go. Para means the other shore, other side or perfection. And parasamgati means go perfectly to the other shore. And bodhi swaha means may the foundation of bodhi be implanted. So the first gate refers to the path of accumulation, the second one to the path of preparation, and then the para gate refers to the path of the path of seeing, which is beyond the ordinary or worldly path, the path of seeing. Go to the Parasamgade, refers to the path of meditation, which is the path which meditates on emptiness, which has been realized on the path of seeing. And then Bodhiswaha means to implant the foundation or the seed of this Bodhi or enlightenment. So the person who goes to that Bodhi is oneself. So by applying the path within oneself, one is able to progress towards the higher spiritual realizations. And therefore, this mantra refers to this progression from the path of accumulation up to the enlightenment. I usually jokingly tell this. If we refer this mantra to our body, we don't need much effort. But when it comes to applying the mind on this gate gate paragate, then it's more difficult. So physically, referring it to the physical body here, the gate gate refers to you are in the childhood stage, then a teenage, then young, middle age, and then old age, and then finally Bodhi refers to the death. So the Chinese custom of ancestral worship shows this one, that someone has already passed. So physically, we don't have to put any effort to attain these stages. They happen automatically to us. But with mind, with regard to mind, we have to put a lot of effort to proceed on this path. So this whole passage, excellent, O noble child, down to the Tathagata will rejoice. All the whole passage was spoken by the Buddha himself. So this is spoken word of the Buddha. And then the last passage shows the delight, assembly members' delight and their delighting and their pledge to uphold. So in the Buddhist Mahayana system, we have the two lineages or tradition, this profound lineage and the extensive conduct lineage. So in the text, you find a mention of the great assembly of monks and the great assembly of the Bodhisattva Sangha. So that shows that there are Mahayana Sangha in the retinue of the Buddha. And then in many sutras, there are question and answers between the Buddha and Bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, Maitreya, and so forth. So the extensive conduct lineage comes from Buddha to Maitreya and then to Asanga, and then the profound lineage has come from passed from the Buddha to Manjushri to Nagarjuna and downwards. And then with regard to the Vinaya tradition, it has passed from the Buddha, the lineage has passed from the Buddha to that of Kashyapya, and then the rest of the seven entrusted ones of the Buddhism. And then the Vinaya tradition of Tibet is said to have passed from that of Rahula, who was the son of the Buddha. And we have to check about who Master Asanga, who was the founder of the Chittamatra tradition, received his vows from. Perhaps in the Chinese chronological records, you may have some mention of who Master Asanga received his vows from, the Vinaya vows. So sometimes we tend to be rather too boastful about the Mahayana path and go directly back to the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas of Maitreya and Manjushri, but not talk about the Vinaya tradition. Next, the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. The author of this text, Geze Togme Sangpo, was a contemporary of the Budin Rinchen 13th century. So he is called Gyaltse Togme. Gyaltse means bodhisattva, but literally it means also the son of a king, a prince. But here this title is not given to him because of being a prince, but because he was a bodhisattva. And then the 37 practices of bodhisattvas refers to the 37. The number refers. The 37 refers to the 37 shlokas or verses that are taught given here for those who aspire to engage in the practices of bodhisattvas. So Namo means salutation, and Lok means world, and Shwara means the proficient one or the Lord, and so Shwaraya means I prostrate or salute the Lord of the world, and refers to Chandrisik Avalokiteshvara. Because this text shows the path of bodhicitta, the cultivation of bodhicitta and compassion, and because Avalokiteshvara is the deity of compassion, this salutation is made to Avalokiteshvara. In Tibetan there are over 100 volumes of Ganjur, the translated words of the Buddha, and except for about 10 of these volumes, the rest were translated from Sanskrit, directly from India. Perhaps some texts like that of Udanavarga and the Sandhya Mochana Sutra and so forth, they were translated from Chinese. And Lotus Sutra and others were translated from Sanskrit. Perhaps there are maybe some texts which were translated from Nepalese also. And then the Tenjur, the translated words of the Indian masters into Tibetan were translated from Sanskrit. There is one text which is called Jeda Shiduchamo, which is not doesn't exist in Tibetan. One Chinese man whom I knew before 1959 had translated some part of it, which I received from him. But then it was lost after 1959. It was, but later on, when people saw that many different text folios were just put together in a heap in one room of the Potala Palace, and people have collected those. Sorted out and then found that except for a few pages of that translation, most of them were found and put together. So this text is being translated into Tibetan in Taiwan. So this is a great text on the Abhidharma. Perhaps the origin is Pali language. So because these conjure and dangers were translated from India, as we usually Tibetan, there's a saying in Tibetan that all the rivers must have their source in the mountain, must be traced back to the mountain, and therefore because all these conjure and tenjur, most of these conjure and tenjur texts were translated from India, we usually write in the beginning of the text in the language of India, and just to. But then this text also mentions this Sanskrit. Gives the salutation in Sanskrit to show that the origin of Dharma is India. So the first verse is also a salutation to the Supreme Guru and Protector Chandra Sikh with my body, speech and mind. So what qualities do the Guru and Chandra Sikh have? The first line shows that of the wisdom of the Guru and Protector Chandra Sikh, and then the second line refers to that of the compassion of the Guru and Protector. So with regard to the wisdom, Nagarjuna says the Buddhas give teachings based on the two truths, which are the conventional worldly truth and the ultimate truth. So all the teachings of the Buddha were based on these two truths, the conventional. So the wisdom side are based on the ultimate truth, and then the method side are based on the conventional truth. So you see that all phenomena neither come nor go refers to or shows that of the wisdom side of the practice. So if you were to check how things actually exist, then you cannot find any thing that you can point to as that, this or that. So just as Master Nagarjuna makes the salutation in the beginning of his fundamental treatise of the called Wisdom of the Middle Way, so a dependent origination is which is devoid of the 8 extremes. All the conceptual or elaborations. So when someone has overcome all the conceptual constructions or elaborations and reached that of the final enlightenment, then one is free from these 8 extremes of elaboration. So, with regard to the identity of things, there is the lack of birth and cessation. And then in terms of continuity, the lack thereof annihilation and permanence. And then in terms of the places, the lack thereof coming and going from one place to another. And then in connection with the language, then or signs or indication, then you have those of the lack of one and many. So, for example, when you take a vase, it's a single thing, and even in relation to one single thing like a vase, you can talk about there being no birth and no cessation, and that the vase itself doesn't exist as its own final reality. And if that is the case, something which is produced, which has birth and cessation, although there is birth and cessation conventionally there, but then if you were to find whether this birth and cessation are in the vase as its final reality, then when you check into this, analyze for the final reality of this vase, you cannot find it being taking birth and ceasing, and so forth. So in conventional terms, the things do exist, just as Milarepa has said. In conventional terms, even the Buddha, everything exists conventionally, but in terms of the ultimate reality, in the ultimate sense, not even the Buddha exists. And so, although the Guru and Avalokiteshvara see that there's neither coming and going in all phenomena, but then they have this great compassion to liberate all sentient beings, and therefore they serve solely for the benefit of sentient beings. So the term protector here, just as Lama Tsongkhapa has said, is because of being the ultimate refuge, the Lama and Guru are referred to as protectors. And then the next verse. The perfect Buddhas. Perfect Buddhas are not ones who are permanently or eternally existing as Buddhas, but by practicing what are needed to become a Buddha, and by overcoming the unfavorable conditions which obstruct one to become a Buddha, a person becomes a Buddha. So someone who has overcome all the negativities, and then who has attained the realization, the full realization of everything, that person is called a Buddha. So the term Buddha or Bodhi can be referred to both of these qualities of having overcome all the negativities and having the full knowledge of everything. And the Tibetan word for Bodhi is Changchup. Chang refers to where the term Chang refers to the purification or overcoming of all negativities, and Chupa refers to the total knowledge of everything. So the one word in Sanskrit is translated by these two words in Tibetan. And Master Nagarjuna says in the Precious Garland, he mentions the two Buddha bodies of the form body and the Dharmakaya, or the truth body. So the form body comes about as a result of the accumulation of merit, and then the Dharmakaya comes about as a result of having accumulated wisdom. And so these two, the method and the wisdom part of the practices, through them comes the two bodies of the Buddha, the physical dimension and the Dharmakaya. So these attributes, the qualities of the Buddha, we have the potential, the seed for these Buddha qualities. So if we don't have these seeds, then we cannot attain the Buddha bodies. Just as if a seed were not to have any potential to give rise to the different flowers and the smells, and then the leaves and sprout, the stems and so forth, it cannot give rise to these. So because the seed has the potential to give rise to the effect, the result of the sprout, the stems, and then the branches, leaves, flowers, and so forth, we can say that this seed is a seed of such and such plant. So similarly, when we talk about the negative actions, an action which has the potential to bring about as a result some kind of suffering or dissatisfaction in us, then that kind of action is called negative action, non-virtuous action. And so we have the potential, the seed for the four Buddha bodies within ourselves. So these are explained in the tantric text very in great detail. So the text says that the perfect Buddhas, the source of benefit and happiness, arise from practicing the genuine Dharma. And so what it shows that through our actions we can bear the fruit. So when you talk about an action being done, you have to have a person doing that action. So this law of causality is the general understanding of dependence. So all phenomena, internal and external, grow and then wither depending on their causes and conditions. Whereas now, in particular, that of the feeling of experience of pleasure and pain, which must come from some continuity of the previous continuity of a mind. So on the basis of this mind, because of certain motivation, we call certain actions being positive actions, which is the motivation to harm others, whereas certain other motivations which bring about happiness, and these motivations are those of the positive ones. So on the basis of this general, the principle of the law of causality, within this understanding of the law of causality, when you create a certain action, then we talk about their results. And so we have the law of causality or the law of karma. And so an action which gives rise to a good effect, a positive effect, is considered to be virtuous, and an action which gives rise to a negative effect, a suffering, is considered to be the negative or non-virtuous action. So now we go through the 37 verses. So
the old religion, as I mentioned yesterday, is every religion which emphasizes the importance of practice of love, compassion, forgiveness. For that, I think all these practice is common. So these are not talking about a philosophical field, whether there's God or not. We are not talking now. Here,
what we are going through now, what we are going to through is not something which is philosophical, but daily life practices. Now that you have obtained this precious human body, the great boat so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and from the ocean samsara, listening, reflecting, meditating with diligence day and night is the practice of Bodhisattva. So this shows the samsara and nirvana, which is also taught in other religious traditions of India. And so it says that you have to engage in listening, reflecting, and meditation. I've been telling people that Chinese brothers and sisters and Vietnamese and Tibetans, that we have to become 21st century Buddhists. So it's important for us to engage in this study, listening, and reflection and meditation of the Dharma. So in the past, people really didn't understand the meaning of the prayers, but they do. For example, in the Chinese case, you say Amitabha, Amitabha, whereas in the Tibetan case, we recite the mantra of Avalokiteshvara Mani Padme Hum, and just keep faith and not really understand the Dharma. But this is not the way we should go about now. We have to study and understand what is the meaning of the Heart Sutra, and by just reciting Amitabha, Amitabha, you will not be able to do that. So I've been telling the Tibetans that just by reciting the Mani mantra, you will not be able to gain any insight. So study is extremely important.
As now already we discussed about Buddhist philosophy. The Buddhist practice based on these philosophy. So, in order to carry effective Buddhist practice, we need conviction. Conviction develops only through investigation. So usually I describe Buddhist way is utilize human intelligence maximum way. Through that way, new views, new ideas come. Then further thinking, investigate, then you get conviction. That conviction then gradually transform our emotion. So through transformation of our emotion, then eventually this ignorant mind eventually become enlightened mind. So that's the Buddhist way. So therefore, knowledge is extremely important. Faith important, but faith entirely based on knowledge or wisdom. So therefore, study is very, very important. So I usually describe, we should be 21st century's Buddhist. Okay, knowing modern science and using modern technology, all these facilities. Meantime, you see, with principle, Buddhist faith. And for Buddhist, with Buddhist principle. Or Christian, with Christian principle, like that. Like that. So study is very, very important.
Towards friends, passion towards friends churns like river, or and hatred towards enemies burns like fire, so forth. So of course we usually have love and hate towards some, and love towards some, and hatred towards others. But of course, even if you are living in your own homeland, what this saying is telling us is that you should not be too much distracted or thrown about by love and hate. Whatever you are doing, of course, you should do that daily, your works and so forth. But do not get distracted. For example, if you are at your home, do not always watch television. So we have a great potential for doing lots of investigation and examination of things, and if you don't use it, but just live it like stagnant while watching television, not really thinking, then it's really not worth. But this intelligence that we have must be used, the potential that we have to for investigating into the nature of things. We must use that. So we Tibetans, of course, we have lost our independence, and therefore we have lost our home. So we have abandoned our homeland. So this verse is telling you to become exiles.
Like us.
There it was. Next verse. So with regards to seclusion or seeking solitude, here it can be referred to the physical solitude and the mental solitude. Physical solitude is being away from all the hassles and social disturbances and so forth, and then mental solitude refers to that of freeing one's mind from all kinds of preconceptions. So of course it refers to the bad kind of thoughts and emotions that we have. We should seek solitude from them or be free from them. But it doesn't mean that you have to lack the ability to check into the nature of things, using your mind to investigate or examine things, because this is needed to gain conviction into the different points of practices that are taught. Therefore, Buddhism, in many of the texts, there's mention of the purpose of writing the text, the content of the text, and then the goal, and then the ultimate goal. So these are taught in relation to, or for those with sharp faculty. So someone who is of sharp faculty is one who sees what the text teaches, and then why is it taught, and what is the purpose of it, or the goal of it, and and so when someone investigates into this, then the ultimate goal is related or connected with the temporary goal that is taught, and then this temporary goal in turn is the understanding it's dependent on the subject matter of the text that you study, and so you see the relationship between these. So someone who goes through investigation, examine the text like that is called someone with sharp faculty. So what is taught in certain text, whether that is can stand the text of reason or not, the test of reason or not, and then see that. Also see that whether certain teachings are beneficial or not. So a person with sharp faculty does this kind of examination. So they do not believe the teachings right away, but having heard the teachings, they become speculative about it or skeptical, and then with that skepticism, they check into the real meaning of the teachings. So without this skepticism or doubt, you will not examine, you will not check into the teachings, and therefore you need it, and in order to investigate or examine the text, and then draw conviction for yourself through examination. So first I would like to say this. The Buddhism, which is based on the two truths, how do you apply it in day-to-day life in your practice? Master Aryadeva says, so first one has to so with regard to what we have to overcome or get rid of, the first one has to overcome or avoid those of the non-virtuous actions, unmeritorious actions, which are basically those of the 10 non-virtuous actions, 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. So these negative actions, the 10 negative actions which harm others, are called non-meritorious actions. And first you have to avoid or get rid of them. So what benefit is there by doing that is that in the short term you attain higher rebirths, and then ultimately you reach that of liberation. And within the liberation, there are the liberation which is merely that of the freedom from all destructive emotions, and then liberation where you are free from all kinds of defilements, including the cognitive obscurations. So because there is this kind of benefit by avoiding the non-meritorious actions, you have to avoid or overcome them first. And then the next one, in the middle, Ayurveda says first get rid of the non-meritorious actions, and in the middle, get rid of the self grasping, within which there is grasping at a person and grasping at a phenomena. So out of these two, according to the highest madhyamika of thought, so because there is no difference in subtlety between these two selflessnesses, if one realizes one, the one could realize the other. The reason or the purpose of meditating on selflessness is to overcome the destructive emotions. So, whereas in here, getting rid of or overcoming the self-grasping refers to the meditating on selflessness to overcome the destructive emotions. So first, then you have to have the three trainings, cultivate the three trainings, the training of morality, the training of concentration, and based on these you cultivate that of the training of wisdom. This wisdom realizing selflessness. And then the third line says, and finally, destroy all views. And so this refers to not only overcoming that of the destructive emotions, but also the cognitive obscurations. And in other words, all kinds of defilements which for which you have to have the complete understanding of selflessness with the help of the method, part of the Bodhisattva practices. And so then with regard to the objective that or the goal that we have to attain, it is very clearly mentioned in Master Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, saying that he says that you have to first attain the higher rebirth, and through that you should attain the higher that of nirvana or liberation. So Georgia, Master Atisha came to Tibet and then wrote this Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment in Töling, in which he makes these three divisions of a person of small scope, medium scope, or intermediate scope, and then the person of higher scope. So the first line refers to those of the practices pertaining to the beings of small scope, and then second line refers to that of the beings of intermediate scope, and then the third line of Ayadeva refers to that of the beings of higher scope. So he will stop here for lunch.